Yo guys, what's going on? Robert Warshack here, and Hearthstone just dropped a massive announcement for us. We have like a new expansion, we've got a new Deathknight class, we've got new keywords, we have an event going on, which is bringing back old sets into the standard meta for 2 weeks. There's a lot to cover, and we gotta cover it. So first things first, new expansion, March of the Lich King, as you can assume. Deathknight is going to be the newest class coming to Hearthstone, and Deathknight, let me tell you, this is like the coolest class I think I had a vision of what a Deathknight would look like, and they just like made it awesome. They've implemented the runes, they've implemented the different specs within World of Warcraft and the Deathknight to make it do a lot of really cool stuff. I'm going to be popping up animations and cool stuff that we saw in the trailer of the announcement video posted by Blizzard that we just finished watching. And it just looks so cool. So first things first is the new Deathknight hero power. It's 2 mana. You get a ghoul, and it has charge, and at the end of the turn it dies. So the hero power is actually be able to summon a ghoul that has charge. That is kind of nuts, and we have not. That just seems really, really good in itself. For the new Deathknight mechanic, we have corpses. So it's kind of like Infuse. When a minion dies, regardless of whatever the minion is, it basically gives you a corpse generator. It will appear at the bottom of your mana, and cards in your deck have basically abilities that use these corpses to have powerful effects. So let's say 5 minions dies, you have 5 corpses, and then you can play a card that says like use 5 corpses to generate a bunch of 2/2s with rush. So there's actually cards that synergize with your minions dying, and there's stuff like corpse explosion, which, you know, does 1 damage for each corpse that you have, and if a minion dies, it'll do it again. So it's like a defile with corpse. I don't know. Insane. Like very, very, very cool mechanics that we have here. In regards to deck building and the different specs of Deathknight, in World of Warcraft, Deathknights have a blood spec, a frost spec, and an unholy spec. Each of these different specs basically change the abilities you can use and overall what your class does. So in Hearthstone, in the deck building screen, you'll actually have the option to put in which runes you want in your deck, whether you want blood runes, unholy runes, or frost runes, and then the cards themselves have a rune or 2 or 3 runes on them signifying which cards you can allow to be put into that deck. So let's say a card requires 2 blood runes in the deck building process, you'll have to make sure that that particular Deathknight deck, you've selected at least 2 blood runes to play that 1 card. There are cards that will require 3 blood runes to play, and those I'm assuming will be the most powerful blood cards and will require a really particular build. So theoretically, you can have like a massive amount of variations of Deathknight. Like as a deck builder, this is like super exciting for me because there's going to be so many different ways to build the Deathknight in itself. Looking at the new keyword, I know we're covering it so fast, guys, but I just want to stream and play with a new event and get right into this. So the new keyword is Mana Thirst. You actually get a bonus effect once you have the X amount of mana crystals, but you don't actually need to spend those mana crystals. So for example, you have a card that deals 1 damage, Mana Thirst 5, deal 2. So if you have 5 mana, when you play the card, it'll actually just do 2 damage instead of 1. So the card actually scales as the game, progresses and you get more mana. The card just gets better. And I think that's really important because you have these cards in your deck with abilities, but when you're at 10 mana, like some of these abilities kind of stink, right? It's really only good in the early game. And when you draw an early game card in the late game, it feels bad. So Mana Thirst allows those cards to scale and gives it a little bit more oomph in the late game, so it actually can do more, which I think is really, really cool. And I think it fits this expansion very, very well. Next, the new minion type is Undead. So we are actually going to get a new minion type Undead, but what is even cooler about this is they went back and changed a ton of old cards to have the Undead keyword, which is really nice, like Blood Mage Thanos, Hamson. Also gone back and even added some keywords to cards like Quillbore. So now we have like Undead and the Quillbore in 1 keyword. So if it's another class, but it's also Undead, like an Undead Dragon, So you actually can have multiple keywords for a card instead of just being like, if a dragon is undead, is it dragon or is it undead? It's both, which is super cool, and I think really awesome that they did that. And there's going to be even more synergies now within that. So that would be the dual minion types, which is super, super, super sick. And then on top of that, we have the Hollow's End event. Hearthstone's actually implementing a new system so you can see when an event is going on. So now in your quest log, it have like a little seal signifying that there's something going on. When you open that up, it'll invite you and it'll have a new tab now for the current events that are happening in Hearthstone. So you have a good idea of like how long it's going to last, what's involved, and if there's something going on right now. And there is. They're actually bringing back the Frozen Throne expansion. You're going to be able to play with all of the Deathknight hero classes and that expansion in standard mode for 2 weeks until March of the Lich King releases. So this meta is going to be kind of wild because we just got an infusion of an entire expansion before the expansion and a new class. And I don't know if we mentioned it so far, but they're actually adding in twice as many Deathknight cards from the start when it comes out than the Demon Hunter class did. So I think the Demon Hunter got like 30 or 35 cards in total when it released. The Deathknight class is getting like 60 something. It's getting more than 60 cards upon release. We're getting an insane amount of cards, an insane amount of content, and it basically starts today. I even missed out on something else. When you log in today, there'll be a new neutral legendary spell called the Sunwell, which is 9 mana, and it fills your hand with spells, and for every card in your hand, it reduces those spells by 1. So obviously you're going to want to play the best spells first and the worst spells last, and the worst spells will cost the most, and the first spells you play will be very cheap. So there's just a lot going on, a lot to unpack here. But basically, that is the bread and butter of what we're seeing right now, is what I've just covered. I think the most exciting part is, of course, the Deathknights. I'm unbelievably stoked. Building these decks is going to be really fun. And what's even cooler is I actually am currently playing a Deathknight in World of Warcraft right now. I'm a main tank. So it's kind of cool that I'm playing a Deathknight in WoW. Been raiding with him for a little bit, and now I get to play Deathknight in Hearthstone as well. So you get double Deathknight action, baby. All right, so with that, we'll do our card reviews and what we've seen so far after this video, but we need to get to streaming and get some content out for you guys of the new event. So with that, I will see you guys in the next video. Of course, I'm super stoked. And as always, I'm Robert Warshack, and happy whatever the hell day it is.